Let's go. So welcome to the webinar today, Navigating the Data Seas. I'm very honored to present two speakers with us today. First and foremost, Satya Kunta from the Chief Data Officer from New York University. He's got more than 20 years experience in the data warehousing, integrating enterprise data, working with management, doing like data strategy, and really instrumental in New York University at the moment to go forward and working. So as a chief data architect there. Also, I'm very honored to present Dr. Nick Golovin, which is the founder of Data Virtuality and also has more than 20 years experience in everything related to data warehousing. Both of them will do a great presentation. The thing I'm really excited about with Satya is that he's really bringing in the side of business and IT. And I'm not going to say anything more than that because I'm going to let Satya do his presentation. Satya, please start.
Sure.
Welcome
Thank
and
you.
thank you.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for people joining across the globe. So thanks for the introduction, Tammy. So what I'm going to be talking about is going to be a more of a journey, but more than that, I would want to kind of provide the perspective of a self-service, which is going to be based on what we have done at NYU and how some of the data virtualization kind of a landscape and the technology is going to be helping people out there who are part of IT. A bit about myself more. So I'm part of central IT. So we kind of manage the central applications. NYU is kind of is a very federated IT. It has different organizations and departments. So it's kind of is a federated model, and how we operate is going to be also be talked about. So I'll go over some of these things. So let me talk about the agenda. So again, about NYU, what our EDM, which is my team, Enterprise Data Management, Vision, Mission, and Guiding Principles are. I'm going to be going about talking about the data virtualization, a closer look, and the benefits of it, and how we have enabled it on our side. And I'm going to be talking about our NYU architecture. I think it just provides a different perspective of what we have been organically building, some of the use cases, and obviously the journey and the lessons learned. So, and the future, I think, is also going to be something which I'm going to be talking about. First and foremost about NYU. Well, NYU is one of the largest universities, private universities in the United States. We have three degree granting campuses. It's not only in New York. We have a campus in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai, and there are 11 global academic centers which we operate on. So there is a lot of research which is all happening across the globe. We have close to 120,000+ applicants for undergrad admissions. So that's quite a number, and it's growing every year. And I think, as I mentioned, right, it's a very federated model. So it's going to be NYU as a whole has 18 schools, and 18 schools combined together is what is considered an NYU. Moving on. So what I want to actually paint a picture for you all is what is a mission, vision, mission, and a guiding principle. So again, this is nothing new. We have actually established this a couple of years back, and in fact, 5 years back when we started to kind of form this group. And these are still relevant at this point, even though we have had a lot of changes within the department, as well as a lot of new technologies and the new processes, but the core principles remain the same. Again, some of these main ones, which I'm going to be touching on today, is the timeliness, the security aspect of it, which is essentially the data governance pieces of it, and the self-service, which is going to be my focus today. Again, if someone who's actually trying to build this kind of a setup, it's not going to happen overnight. So you have to actually form some kind of a coming up with those data strategy, like understanding what is that business priorities you would want to actually work with, having this kind of laid out and be able to evangelize what it is with the end users is going to definitely add a lot of buy-in from a lot of people. So we have done this a couple of years back, and we keep on using this as a reference model to understand where we are. It's more like a reference check. So moving on, so what is data virtualization? I know data virtualization has been in the market for a very long time, and I'm not going to go over when it was officially came up as part of the marketplace. But what I would say is again, there are many definitions, but one thing which is pretty much I feel is very relevant to what data virtualization is: the distributed and heterogeneous nature of the source data, right? The way it hides the information behind the scenes, and how we are kind of using these platforms as a federation engine, right? So you have your virtual databases now with the cloud. A lot of these have been kind of virtualized. So there is a lot of empowerment which actually happens in trying to integrate and use multiple sources of information. So mainly for the SQL users who are pretty much predominantly very familiar with the SQL and how the data virtualization platform kind of enables those kind of features. With that being said, I would want to focus today on a self-service lens, trying to adopt that. And I'm going to be using a phishing analogy. Again, people have seen this in the market, or people have seen this a lot of times as a reference. But if you look at two ends of the spectrum, one is going to be managed services, which is going to be you actually feed in a lot of information. Like, for example, let's say that you have a very federated model where central IT is going to be at the center of doing a lot of things, where you would want to feed this information, provide a lot of kind of curation and hand-holding and a white glove service. But on the other side of things is there are models where you would want to actually have a more of a self-service nature of it. Like you teach how to actually do the phishing, and you actually enable a lot of empowerment for the end users to kind of take up the ownership and the accountability of how they would want to do it. So the focus is going to be, okay, how do we pivot this to have a more self-service rather than less overhead on being a managed services? This is where the data virtualization comes in play. And I'm going to be talking more on this next slide. So traditional data access and the data virtualization. So let's see that in the context, right? So it's almost like you have your access. Let's say you have a phishing rod and you would want to actually have someone fish for something. It's almost like trying to locate an ideal location and trying to fish for something at a very specific point. But data virtualization is more like you're giving a bigger net to people rather than a fishing rod, and trying to actually cast a wider net to catch multiple things. So you're actually empowering the end users to do a lot more things, which would actually enable them to kind of be self-servicing themselves rather than trying to doing one thing at a time. It's not piecemealing it, but at the same time, enabling a lot more capabilities, which end users might be able to kind of take these opportunities. Now let's look at a closer look at what exactly, and again, putting this into perspective of a phishing analogy, right? So what do you actually usually need? So you actually would try to actually find the right spot, obviously, to go fishing, obviously, whether you are going on a boat or whether you're going on something or a ship or whatever the case may be, right? But you would want to pick up the right spot. Now, at the same time, you need to actually understand what kind of fishing nets you're using, right? So either you're using a bigger net or you're using a small net, and also trying to catch a lot more many things. Like it's not in the fish, you probably are catching a lot bigger fish, smaller fish, and everything. So trying to put that in perspective, right spot is going to be your source systems in the terms of data virtualization. Catching a fishing net is using the right platform. In this case, data virtuality, since we're talking about it, selecting the right platform, which actually provides you those kind of capabilities, which has a lot of auditing, which has a lot of controls and things which you would be able to kind of get a lot out of that platform. And eventually trying to provide a lot more specifics of consumption side, where you're not only giving access to end users to actually do specific things, but you are actually enabling them, whether it's going to be an application development, whether it's going to be an ERP or a CRM implementations. So there's a lot which can happen where you are selecting the right platform, selecting the right sources, and then trying to enable those as the features. Okay, so now let's talk about the benefits of teaching what to fish. And I think these are very generic. I mean, again, nothing specific to data virtualization as is, but this is common across the board. That's what IT kind of deals with on a day-to-day basis. So it just empowers a lot of self-service capabilities, obviously. The onus is on the customers, right? So on the consumers, in fact, where they are actually doing a lot more things where IT is actually trying to facilitate things and trying to actually manage the platforms or the user access and things like that. Since I already mentioned, we're pivoting to a more of self-service. What it actually promotes is a more of a shared responsibility between the facilitators or the data custodians, in this case, from an IT side or central IT side, or the data consumer. So it's going to be always be that shared responsibility rather than trying to have someone say, "Hey, I need this getting done," right? So this is more which it promotes. Obviously, less overhead on the IT teams, right? And then the freedom to bring in your localize, and this is a major part, right? So there could be a lot which could be enabled through these platforms where you could actually fold them as part of a centralized governance structure, right? You don't want to actually have shadow systems built in. Again, I'm not against building shadow systems, but having a governance view or a single pane of glass to understand what is being used, how it's being used, and things like that is a possibility using certain platforms. And I think data virtualization plays that role where you are asked to bring in your own data or the data assets and connect them in a much more governed fashion, and which kind of eliminates the silos. One of the other things which we majorly focus on is a reusability aspect of it, being a very federated model where we operate on, where we try to be as much build data assets or processes which are reusable in nature. When I say that, what it means is that we are not trying to curate or trying to build things for individual use. That is, again, being delegated to the data consumers on the end user side. But what we are focused on is building a central layer or a semantic layer which actually can enable that reusability rather than spinning up the wheel and trying to build that again and again. The platforms by itself has a lot of security, role-based access controls, which you would kind of builds another buffer layer in between your, whether it's a warehouse, whether it's a central repositories or systems to the external applications. So that is what the beauty of the virtualization platform is going to bring in. And obviously transparency and audit log, auditability of what is being connected. And faster time to market. Obviously, since you're casting a wider net or enabling people to use a lot more, a lot faster development, which would be enabled as such in terms of marketability of the applications. Now, the second part I would want to actually go over some of the slides is what we have built organically, right? So this is what I call it as a layered architecture. And one thing which I would want to mention that, okay, nothing is going to be happening overnight. I mean, it is a very organic process. You would need to actually figure out what the business priorities are, where the IT need to be making those investments on. But to go onto this layered architecture, obviously you have your source systems, but the central data infrastructure is where we have spent a lot of time on. These are the processes. These are some of the backend initiatives what we enabled over the years, right? Kind of creating a master data management kind of a setup, like we kind of ADA, which is our authoritative institutional data assets, which is where a lot of work has been gone from improving the processes, improving the technologies on how we actually ingest the data, how we model the data. So we actually pivoted to a different kind of a data modeling technique called data vault. So this is where a lot of work has happened over the years to kind of come up with this. And obviously, a lot of people usually have the reporting data marts. There are different ways, and the data lakes, obviously, and the lake houses, which are the new trends right now. This all becomes your central repository or the central infrastructure layer. What you see at the top is going to be your distribution layer, right? BI and the business intelligence obviously is the basis. I mean, you would start there, but for us, based on our business priorities, we actually started to build on a different ways of data distribution layers of building those distribution channels. In this case, API platform, we have built that from scratch over the years, and that is what we started to look at a lot of requirements from our end users saying that, okay, there is an application development and we would need to kind of curate or have those things enabled for the end users. The latest and the greatest is the data virtualization platform, which kind of builds that bridge between your BI layer as well as your very technical API kind of a layer, where a platform which enables a lot of self-service and the virtualization piece, where a SQL-based or data mashups and how would they want to, end users want to bring in the connections to the platform is what it's going to happen. So what is it, right? So when I talk about the NYU, the layered architecture, this actually provides, I mean, you need to have the ability and the way of marketing these layered architecture to the end users, so they know what to use, right? Inventory of what exists, because we don't want to be having something which is not required to be used being used where it is not required. When I say that, I mean, you don't want to be using reports to actually make data downloaded from the reports and being able to connect it to your applications as is. There are platforms which we need to be enabled to make sure that, okay, it actually fits the purpose or fits the business need. So that is when to use the data and where to find this data. And I'm going to be talking about in the future slides on what kind of repositories, where do we actually market, and how do you actually do that kind of an inventory of what exists, right? And what is a marketplace? What kind of things are assets which are going to be enabled for the end users to use? And how to obviously get access to. And this is a very critical part, because it's not that everything is going to be enabled for everyone. I mean, you need to have a governance process built in to understand the need and provide those the specifics of how people are required to be asking for information and how the information is going to be governed and provided access to. So let's talk about a day in the life of a data customer. So at least on our side, what we have started to look at is looking at this from a data portal, right? So a web front end, which actually gonna list out all. This is more like a consumer portal where you would be able to look at what is available, right? When someone, again, this is not for the outside world, but this is for our internal users to look at, for the administrators and people who are very familiar with what is how the structures are built in, right? So this is more about what kind of reports are enabled, what kind of APIs we have enabled, and what kind of data assets which could be used for end user consumption. I'm going to be skipping the step 2, but I'm going to be talking about this because this is a process and there's a lot more involved in here. But how we as a data infrastructure layer is going to be enabling, like what kind of forms we would ask people to come in and fill in, asking for information, right? And how do we govern that kind of information for access controls and things like that, and how we enable at the consumption layer. From the data virtualization, obviously, the data virtuality, which we are talking about today, whether it's going to be a report or whether it's going to be an API as such. The step 2, if you were to expand this in the previous slide, I mean, this is what it's going to consider. And again, this could be done in many ways. I mean, this is what we thought over the years that it would make sense. There is a lot of governance processes involved, starting from like someone requesting access to certain things, right? There is a board which actually reviews that on our side, which is an architecture review board and an architecture governance working committee where they actually look at things from an architectural standpoint, whether they are secured enough, the security is good, or do we have anything related to compliances? Do we have anything we need to take care of in terms of networking and things like that. So there's a lot which actually goes behind the scenes in terms of reviewing the requests, and that gets redirected to our data stewards in a way that they review these as pre-approved by IT, and then they stamp whether this is allowed to be connected to the central systems or be granted access to certain things, right? If there are any issues, there would be questions back and forth, and people would actually look at answering those questions, whether if it's a sensitiveness of the data, whether it's going to be non-compliant to certain standards, whether it's going to be policy related, we would actually review those and then be kind of fine-tuning those requests based on how we can actually grant access to. The step 4 in the middle is basically a physical building of access. I mean, again, this is a role-based access control. We have a lot which actually being put together in terms of specific controls, which the schools, like I mentioned, like 18 schools, or it could be the departments as such, where we can actually fine tune the controls based on what end users are enabled to see and look at the data, right? I mean, there is both a row level as well as a column level controls, which the data virtuality by itself enables it very, very easily. I mean, we have seen that because we don't want to actually rebuild the data assets from scratch. We have the more like a turnkey process where we can actually make sure that, okay, certain fields are anonymized or certain fields are blocked for end users, or certain rows are actually blocked based on the level of access which we would be able to grant. So it's more like the control process is enabled for a role, and role is actually kind of mediating on what kind of data would be enabled for the end users as such. So we're not rebuilding any data structures from scratch. Once it's enabled for all, but we would control it based on those fine-grained access controls. And also, obviously, there is going to be a lot on the self-service nature of it. So let's say if there is a CRM application, we would, if there is a need to actually have change data captures, like let's say not a full data set every time, we would be able to enable those. And the processes which are required, I mean, we don't have to be sticking to a SQL. I mean, there could be APIs, there could be CSV feeds, and any kind of connectivity can also be enabled through this platform as such. And this is a real world example of what we've done recently. And this is, again, almost complete and close to completion in terms of school level access, what we have enabled. Again, what you see at the middle is a governance portion of it, which is essentially what the key driver of how the controls are going to be built in, right? Again, this is a reusable nature of it. What you see are our MDM related master data hubs on how we actually enable certain things, reporting data marts, obviously, and how the end user applications are going to be coming through those governance channels, like requesting access to it, and data stewards approving it through the governance process, and how we enable that from an end user access. One thing which I would want to mention it again, this is a pull, not a push. So it is a responsibility for the end users, and that is the part which I'm trying to say that, okay, this is the self-service nature of it. So I mean, sometimes IT is so small that they would not be able to kind of accomplish a lot. And that has to be delegated to the end users to kind of make an effort to actually do this as a self-service feature. So this is so IT is going to be responsible for facilitating that, and end users are going to be looking at this from a consumption side of things based on the access controls and what is going to be enabled as such. Okay, now let's talk about the journey, right? And I think this has a lot to do with, as I mentioned, organically building the platforms and onboarding the end users. And I think obviously everyone has, from a novice user to an expert, I think you always need to kind of work to understand the business need to start with. There is anytime you start a new platform or you actually develop a new platform, there is always going to be that initial struggle. So there is a lot of requirement for handholding, like trying to understand what people are expecting from the platform or the technology or a solution, right? So, and that is what is always a requirement as such. I mean, irrespective of whether it's a new platform or an older platform, I think you need to provide the handholding, right? And I think, again, it all boils down to the value proposition on what you're trying to enable, right? I mean, you need to understand the business value, what these platforms are going to provide with an example, right? So you don't want to be kind of creating something in the air and expect that it's going to perform, right? It's not. It has to be very intentional to understand that, okay, this is more to do with a specific need, and this is how we are solving a problem, and that is what the value proposition needs to provide. And obviously, a lot of data literacy and knowledge sharing has to happen. And I think this is where we've been working with the teams, at least from an NYU side, to kind of provide that initial um, experimentation, or whether they would want to actually explore things. We provide those kind of knowledge sharing sessions. We actually onboard people. We kind of invite them to look at what they're expecting from the platform, hearing the feedbacks, and trying to adjust to what we can actually enable some of these things. Shared responsibility, obviously, I talked about it, and defining the success criteria. So, and I think we came up with the success criteria, right? And again, these are tied back to some of our guiding principles, and this is what our success criteria is, what we have looked at on what would make sense, right? Data democratization. So we would want to have right data to the right people at the right time, and that is essentially what this is, right? Self-service, obviously we talked about it. Faster time to market, right? Granular access controls, again, these are very essential, because you don't want to be at a position where you would need to backtrack some of the access which cannot be undone, right? So you would need to start from very early to start to enable those things. And obviously, transparency and auditability of how we want to do this. So having to define those success criteria is going to definitely provide these additional buy-ins and the value propositions to make sure businesses understand what is the value they're getting out of it. And finally, I think one of the things, again, lessons learned, right? Obviously, I mean, as I mentioned, nothing is going to be that smooth sailing. Obviously, there are definitely some lessons learned. One thing I kind of mentioned it earlier as well, paint the right picture, right? Clearly and concisely. So having to define your standards, having to define the best practices, and having to define what to use and when to use are essential. I mean, for any organizations to work in a very kind of a structured way, these are the must. And I think, and gladly we are able to do that, because we have been able to define what is that we would want to actually have end users visibility on. And this is what we have been trying to work with them, train them, and understand them. Like, hey, these are better ways of doing or making those connections, right? If let's say there is a CRM application, there are better ways of making those application integrations, rather than using a different trivial ways of consuming the data and things like that. So those are all part of the best practice. Again, it's not a one-time deal. You have to fine-tune that. It's an iterative process. It's not going to be one time done and dusted. So I think that this is an ongoing process as such. And manage expectations and goals. Again, there are a lot of moving pieces whenever you are enabling not only the data virtualization platform as is, but any kind of platform. You need to define those specific success criteria and goals and start small, right? You don't want to be boiling the ocean, and that is where a lot of failures happen. And the pitfalls of not doing everything at a time is a must. You don't want to be doing that. And obviously, feedback sessions, and we always have these as an active engagement, trying to understand how we can receive feedback. It could be constructive criticism, it could be negative as well, but we would need to understand what the end users are. We don't want to be, IT should not be the roadblock for end users as such, and that is what we're trying to get away from, and facilitating all these platforms and processes to enable them, right? And making sure to assure that IT is still responsible for it. Even though you are delegating some self-service features of it, it doesn't mean that just throwing a ball into a different court. No, IT is still responsible for a lot of things. And I think having that assurance is definitely going to go a long way. And overall vision, I think this is what the success criteria are going to come up with, or you come up with, is going to be a shared vision, right? And you need to have them buy into those things. I already mentioned it, but start small, baby steps. I mean, nothing fancy. Don't want to be rushing and running. I mean, crawl before you walk, right? So that's exactly what we've been doing. And again, I think a lot of attention is actually focused on throwing a technology to solve a business problem, which it cannot. Understanding the business problem, right? Understanding how a process needs to be changed is essentially what people need to address first, and then looking at the technology. And I think that is a very essential part of it. Okay, now let's talk about the future. And there is a lot which is actually going on, and I think what we've been actually embarking on a journey is more on the advanced analytics pieces of it, which we usually are not yet doing, but other than, I mean, from at least from the higher ed space, I think we would want to actually take these opportunities with the new. I'm not talking about Gen AI, by the way. This is more about the traditional AI using machine learnings and the NLP, so the augmented analytics pieces of it. So we have been trying to look at decision intelligence on why something has changed and how do we make some corrective actions. There's more about prescriptive and predictive analytics. And what we've been trying to kind of accomplish that is using the virtualization layer as a semantic layer on top of it to kind of use some of the use cases. Again, this is very initial, and there is a lot more which is going to be happening in this space, but this is a starting point of how we can actually build some of the things from an advanced analytics using the virtualization layer and facilitate some of the advanced use cases which we have been encountering on our side. So, but this is something which we are going to be heavily focusing on in the future. Okay, with that being said, I think I'll hand it over to Tammy. That's the end of my webinar and presentation.
Thank you so much, Satya. That's awesome. I love that we're going navigating through the data seas, and you said like the right spot where the data is and where we're looking for the data, and then have a custom net. So look for your tool to make sure that you get the information you need, the right type of data set for the right type of people, where you put the governance in, where you maybe even start with the predictive analytics, and then that you get the results at the end. I love the analogy. So thank you so much for that. That was really cool. I, at the beginning, didn't say that obviously the session has been recorded, and there is a question and answer at the bottom of your screen. So please ask questions. We're going to get them at the end of this session and kind of come. I think Lucia was so kind to kind of put that in there. So the Q&A one is from my lovely colleague, Lucia. Having said that, with no further ado, I don't know. I think Nick, have we handed over we need to hand over, I think, the presentation. I think you're ready there.
Yeah.
If not, let me talk.
Yeah. No, I'm ready. Thank you very much, Satya, for your presentation, and great that I was mentioning this to Satya also before when we were preparing for the session, that it's unusual, and that I personally like it very much how much New York University addresses this project from the point of view of users, of their needs, of bringing data more to the people. So my part is actually more technical, and I will make it shorter because of this, but I think it's still important because also any business initiative, especially in our times, should be also supported by technology. But before I get to the technical part, let me announce some news. The news was not there yet when we started organizing and promoting this webinar and started inviting everybody, but it happened in between. So I would like to announce that as of some weeks ago, Data Virtuality joined the company called CData, and CData is data connectivity company, and the mission of CData is to simplify access to any data anywhere. And this is something what CData does based on SQL connectors, standards based to a large number of different data sources. And on top of the connectors built by CData, also a large number of additional services is being provided in the area of data integration, and this includes CData Sync, which is ETL, EOT, and reverse ETL tool, which is also includes CData Connect Cloud, which is multi-point no-code connectivity solution, and since of some weeks, it also includes Data Virtuality, which is enterprise-grade data virtualization solution. And this all is using and benefiting from the rich connectivity of CData, which is, I think, well known in the data integration space and used by many other providers as well, but now also by CData Virtuality. Having made this announcement, let me now go to the probably most technical slide of today and show the platform architecture, how it works behind the scenes. I will not go very deep, but just kind of uncover the next technical layer beneath what Satya was explaining. And looking at the platform architecture, you have all kinds of different data sources, and that includes the connectors we created the data virtuality, but now also additional 270 connectors created by CData. This includes all possible things out there: data warehouses, data lakes, SQL, NoSQL, streaming, cloud, plain files, data lakes, data lake houses, all possible things which we can connect to our platform. And this is something which Satya also mentioned, this concept of interconnecting things. This is something we are covering with a large number of our connectors. If we jump on the other side, then we also take care of distributing the data and giving access to data. We provide a large number of standardized unified interfaces to the outside, which create this kind of single source of data truth, if I may put it this way. We have all kinds of technical interfaces like ODBC, web service, JDBC, or data specialized connectors. They provide access to the same data, but in different technical way, to all kinds of front-end tools, and we also provide some front-end tools of our own, both for developing data and also for consuming data. This also integrates nicely with specialized metadata tools like enterprise data catalogs, but it also integrates with data storage platforms, with things like Snowflake, Azure Synapse, and about 20 other systems and platforms which data virtuality can use to store data if needed. And in the middle, you will see the data virtuality platform itself. And as I mentioned, I will not go too deep into there, but the key point is this platform provides a uniform view of all connected data towards the data consumers. It allows organizing data, structuring data. It also allows integrating data in different ways. So you can have a purely virtual view, which gives you live data, but you can also copy and persist the data in the analytical storage. And you have all those additional concepts covered, which Satya also mentions, things like security and audit layer, things like data lineage, things like integration with developer tools, such as like data ops tools and Git tools, and so on. And it also helps you in a AI supported way. It helps you choose between the right ways to integrate your data on the platform. So if you want to do it in a live way, or if you want to increase performance by materializing data, our platform helps you make those decisions. And as I mentioned, without going too deep, before I think some things are really better shown than explained. So I would just provide a quick glimpse of the platform itself. So here I'm switching to the product view of data virtuality, and we start with business data shop, because this is where Satya started from, and this is where the business users are getting their data from. This is where they can search for the published data sets. This is where they can connect different tools like Tableau, Power BI, or many others. They can also download their data. The most common question is, this is configurable. The most common question is, can we disable Excel? Yes, it's also possible to disable the Excel capability if needed. And this is the interface of the business user. At the same time, it's also possible to connect directly from the front-end tools. Just start with Tableau or with Power BI or with other tools and connect directly to data virtuality via technical interface. If we look behind the scenes a bit more from the technical side, then usually the work of the people who provide data starts with connecting new data sources, and this is where we have an ever-growing number of data sources, and now with merger with CData, this list will increase a lot. We also provide a number of systems where you can store your data in between. So this is this analytical storage, which I mentioned in the architecture overview. This will help you increase performance of the queries if needed. The jobs are doing work of materializing, replicating data if needed, and also providing any kind of automation support. In the code editor, you can model your data, and you can do it both using graphical interface of something we call View Builder, but you can also use pure SQL interface, and of course for very complex transformations, for very complex dependencies, it makes totally sense to also use pure SQL capabilities. Yeah, so I would say this is something which should provide a brief glimpse of what we are doing. One thing which probably deserves some additional mention is that both our materializations interface, this is where we recommend to pre-calculate some things to speed up the operations, the performance, and also the code editor. They have some AI-based features, and we are also working to get more AI features into our software, so that we can not only provide manual ways of interacting and modeling the data, but also ways to do it in quicker AI-based manner. Yeah, so having said this, let me jump back and say thank you very much for the attention, and put on the Q&A slide to start the Q&A session.
So a couple of questions were asked and answered as well, but I will just read out so for everybody else, and then please feel free to kind of ask some more questions. Actually, let me do it the other way around. Let's start with the two questions which have just come in. This goes to both of you. What is the add value data virtuality has on top of a data lake? I think Satya mentioned a little bit earlier that they are running a couple of data lakes there, and then they're also talking about data virtualization. So maybe Satya, you can add or talk about it, because as you said, data lake and data warehouses are kind of lake warehouses are very, very topical at the moment.
Yeah, so I think the value add, I would say, is anytime when people are requested to look at the raw data, and I think data virtuality platform as is going to provide that kind of information. For example, let's say your data scientists or your quants might want to actually look at this from its raw shape and form of how the data is presented from a source system, right? And one of the ways you would be able to enable that is through pushing the data into a data lake. It could be NS3 or Amazon based, or any kind of data lakes which are out there, and then plug those as a distribution layer where the data virtuality plays that semantic layer to push that information. So it both acts as a buffer as well as a semantic layer to facilitate that raw data kind of an information.
Nick, would you like to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I would like to add the point that there is this question is actually asked relatively often. What is the add value of data virtualization on top of data lake? And I think this can be viewed from two perspectives. and the perspective is how to look at what data lake is providing, because I think like for the past decade, and especially like about 10 years ago, the concept of data lake was like data lake is a place where you will put all your data in, and it will live there, and you will run your analysis out of it, you will store them there, you will have a history there, and you would probably not need anything more than the data lake. But I think the development of the past years actually showed that data lakes are not really, while being a very valuable concept, very valuable technology, they're actually not providing not catering to this kind of concept. So far it doesn't look like any company or any organization arrived at putting all data into the single data lake. So it happens often that the teams beyond the data lake who are building the data lake, they are building it with a goal of putting everything into one data lake. But in reality, we see that some companies have one data lake team in Paris and another data lake team in Tokyo, and they end up being having two data lakes, and then 5 additional data warehouses, and then also a dozen of other systems which are not connected. So the added value of data virtualization on top of this data lake concept, a data lake which kind of is your only solution for everything, there would probably be no value. But in reality, this doesn't exist. So in reality, there's data lake is really very good for some things, but there's still a lot of other things which are not inside of the data lake. So that's, I'm sorry if this answer is a little bit long, but it's just a big theoretical discussion we were having for a long time with different people with different venues. So I really thought I would explain this a bit more.
So like the data lake to store the data, put there, be able to do calculation, and data virtuality as a data access layer, making sure that the business can access all the data in a very short and obviously not as technical as everybody
So
else.
if we look at data lake of inexpensive storage of large amount of raw data, then there's certainly a lot of value, and this is how we see data lakes used in reality in many cases. If we look at the concept of data lake as just something which holds all the data, then it just doesn't exist. And actually, also according to the current legislation, in many legislation, it's not allowed to exist. If you look at the GDPR, if you look at similar regulation in other countries, actually you just cannot store all the data together in something like a data lake.
Thank you so much. So I've got one last quite long question, and then it's up to everybody, like if they want to ask a little bit more and speak to speakers. If not, we'll bring to a close. So this is long. So how heterogeneous are the data sources and combinations of data done in the virtual layer at NYU, joining data from multiple sources, and what complications arose of this heterogeneity? Increased performance issues, overhead to making virtual models more intuitive to join, etc. If such issues were encountered, is it an ongoing process to address these things, particular performance, or are these kinds of issues ever truly remediated? That's a long question, and Satya, I'll give you about a minute to answer that, and then Nick, and then we'll draw to a close.
Well, yeah, so well, it's a very loaded question, but I'll try to kind of answer this in a way which is what we have done, right? So every time when you are trying to connect multiple source systems, obviously there are going to be issues. But what we have done, at least at our side, is we have made these joins and connection within our data warehouse to start with. So we have built those models, or the data models as such, where the connections between the multiple source systems are actually happening in the warehouse rather than in a data virtualization layer. What it's going to provide is very the way you model things and the granularity of the data and how the business, some of the business questions you're trying to answer are going to be handled in the modeling exercise rather than trying to do this in the virtualization part, which is at the later half of what you would want to do. So that kind of eliminated trying to kind of do processes at the end of as part of the data virtualization when we are distributing. So we kind of pre-join them through the multiple data sources, create those models, and then publish those models in as a semantic layer into the semantic layer for end users to consume. So what it does eliminate is it also takes care of when you have a right data warehouse. Let's say we have a Snowflake, obviously all our data warehouses are part of Snowflake. It removes that latency issues or anything like that, because you already pre-joined them. You're kind of creating the flattened structure. So you have a less effort on the end users. All the effort is going to be handled based on the IT side of things. I don't know if Nick, you would want to add anything?
I think since it was mostly addressed to you project experience, I think I would just agree to what you said.
Okay.
And then we just got, whoa, I took little questions. Last one, how DV, or is it possible that DV has the ability to replace an ETL tool like Informatica? So I'm going to try and answer that, Nick, and then I'm going to ask you to kind of address, because I think that's a little bit of a business side. Are you okay for me? Well, I'm just going to.
Yeah. So
a lot
should
of times.
Nick can
You go for it. Go for it, Nick. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will try to answer it very quickly. So yes, it is possible to have to replace an ETL tool like Informatica. Why is it possible? Because data virtuality has data virtualization tools, data virtualization capabilities, and also ETL capabilities. And for 80% of the ETL processes which are being created, ETL pipelines, you can just avoid having them completely by having either data virtualization logic created or materialized data virtualization views. So that's covered. There are some cases where pure data virtualization does not fulfill the requirements. These concerns cases like data historization, data cleaning, and some similar cases which really require storage of the data. And these are the capabilities which data virtuality has. So there are capabilities to create custom ETL process. There are capabilities to use predefined wizards to create, for example, a slowly changing dimension, something which pure data virtualization tool cannot do. But data virtuality combining those two capabilities can replace tools like Informatica or other ETL tools.
Yeah, thank you so much for the answer. I just want to add one more little thing about it is that it's really up to the use case and the clients who have and what kind of products they have to make a decision what they want or don't want to replace. So we don't come in and say you must replace everything. It can actually kind of layer itself on what is existing and work as additional. I think that's also important to think. So if you want to, yeah. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So there's no force of it. Depending on the use case. So there is, thank you for the answer. Thank you for the follow-up. And I think this is us kind of drawing to a finish. Yeah, I think we'll have a comment there, like, thank you for the answer, but it sounds like the answer to avoiding these issues was to avoid doing it in virtualization layer in the first place, or not really use that capability. Maybe not. I suppose the virtualization layer accesses or sorts out other problems to a certain extent, and you kind of go forward on that one. But then there's also thanks for the responses from everybody. Thanks so much, Satya, for the presentation and sharing with us the journey you've done, and how you're trying to go forward. I really like the analogy I already said. Thank you, Nick, so much for quickly giving a look at the little product. For anybody who wants to kind of play with it, please note that there is a version on the website which you can play and trial with. And everything is obviously recorded at this very moment in time. So there will be recording being sent out in an email to everybody who's given us the right email. And with that, I will close the session. Thank you very much, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.